Hey, hello, how are you? My name is Enrique Palafox. I'm here with Daycare Soccer. Daycare, how are you today?
I am very well, thank you, my friend. The action has been building up with this great anticipation of the arrival of a certain ship into Whitby with a certain cargo, and now it's all about to happen. So this is, as you and I have chatted about in the past, some of our favorite parts of the book.
Oh yeah, this is getting very exciting in the novel because the arriving of the Demeter into the Whitby port, it's amazing. It's one of the most powerful scenes of the count, and it's one of the scariest passages of the novel.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And just to say this, it wasn't Bram Stoker's first choice for the location to arrive. He had originally thought Dover was going to be the place. And obviously that changed for the good of Whitby and the good of the story. He went on a holiday and he just fell in love with Whitby, a 2-week holiday. And as we'll chat about some of the things he learned about it, he chose this as the right place.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's fate, when you think of an author goes on a holiday, loves something, finds local stories, loves the surrounding atmosphere, and boom, changes his notes, changes the story.
It had to happen. Okay, let me translate this. Bienvenidos, esta es nuestra semana 14, la lectura de tiempo real de Drácula. Y es una semana muy interesante porque es la llegada del barco Demeter al puerto de Whitby. Precisamente Decker nos estaba contando lo afortunado que fue que Bram Stoker haya pasado unas vacaciones en Whitby, porque eso cambió completamente el rumbo de la historia. Precisamente él quería que fuera en Dover, ¿no? Originalmente, pero bueno, finalmente terminó siendo en Whitby. Okay, Decker, let's go into this.
Yeah, so we've got Lucy and Mina, who are already there, and they're starting their holiday. And the cool thing is, we begin to get the feeling that something isn't right, and the reader is put on the edge a little bit. And the first sign of this is that Mina reports that Lucy is sleepwalking.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things our listeners have to understand. Nowadays, we understand about sleepwalking and these things that happen. But back in the day when Bram wrote this story, this was a sign of some kind of supernatural, something taking over, some mental problem, which was looked at as being, some extraterrestrial, something is taking over the person's body and mind. Because when you're asleep and when you're dreaming, you are vulnerable. And some of the books that were in the London Library actually have chapters on this, that sleepwalking, vampirism, somnambulism, these are all like pseudosciences and weird things that nobody can explain, and therefore Bram was very smart to exploit this and insert this, that here is the very rich, very pretty, she's got these suitors, and yet something is happening in the aura of her world that's causing her to sleepwalk, not in control. And that's not a good sign. And that is a sign that she's doing it more and more often. And also Lucy's mother says, oh, and her father had the same problem.
Yeah.
But the father right now is a guy we don't know about. He's already gone, so what caused him to die? They were worried about Lucy walking on top of a rooftop and sleeping.
And falling.
So it's a serious concern that they had to deal with. And Bram was masterful to insert something that was already on people's mind as a sign of danger.
Yeah. Aquí hay una situación que tiene que ver otra vez con la situación de la época, ¿no? En la época victoriana no había muchos estudios acerca de lo que es el sonambulismo como lo tenemos ahorita, y había muchas circunstancias que hacían pensar a las personas que el sonambulismo también era un síntoma de perder la razón y de ir perdiendo la cabeza, ¿no? Entonces ahí Bram lo utiliza perfectamente ese pretexto dentro de su narrativa, ¿no? Para poner a Lucy en un riesgo total y que el lector, bueno, pues se sienta un poco agredido, ¿no? Lucy somehow is in a parallel way while this character Regan McNeil in The Exorcist, because she is very innocent, very
vulnerable.
Yeah, and suddenly it all fell apart, and Lucy somehow is this vulnerable figure.
She is, and before we just move on from Lucy, we've also got to remember that Arthur Holmwood's father is very ill at this time, and so you get this feeling as the next couple of pages happen in this chapter, that something as bad is going to happen. We've got Lucy sleepwalking, you've got the storm coming, but you've also got Holmwood's father who's getting very sick. And obviously we find out that he dies, but what is the cause of this? Is it this approaching storm and the danger that it brings?
And Jonathan is, at this point, we really don't know how he's dealing with.
You know, Mina, the strong one, you know, she's not vulnerable. She's not as vulnerable as Lucy because she's smart. She's the modern woman. She's got lots of brains, and she's figuring out, okay, this is not right for Jonathan. No letters to Hawkins. The letter that I got was only one sentence. This is not like him. So she's beginning to look like a detective, and she's going to need those smarts later on, but she's also worried. So everybody right now is unsettled. The novel was smoothly going along, but now everything is churning up like a big tornado is about to happen.
Definitely. Y aquí, bueno, pues todo esto que está pasando tiene que ver con una serie de circunstancias muy desafortunadas para todos en la novela. Por un lado, bueno, pues está pasando lo de la llegada de la tormenta. Por el otro lado, vamos a ver lo que sucede con Lucy. Por el otro lado, vamos a ver que el padre de Arthur Holmes se pone enfermo y él tiene que salir disparado un poco. Entonces, toda esta serie de circunstancias, aunado a que Jonathan Harker está perdido y no sabemos qué pasa con él, bueno, pues hacen esta sensación de que algo terrible está por pasar. Y ahí es donde, bueno, pues estamos ahorita.
Now, I want you to translate this sentence. There's actually two of them, and I'm going to say one, then the other, because it's classic foreshadowing. You know, Bram is giving us a hint of what's to come. And this is Mina saying this about Lucy, that you know, she's making a comment on how she looks. She said she's a trifle stouter, means put on a little weight, and her cheeks are a lovely rose pink. She has lost that anemic look which she had. Anemic is lack of blood. So translate that. That is absolutely critical.
Aquí Mina empieza a describir la apariencia de Lucy y es muy importante para el relato porque vemos precisamente un cambio drástico en su apariencia. Estamos viendo cómo sus mejillas empiezan a poner un poco más rollizas, ella se pone más llena de vida y demás, ¿no? Entonces aquí empieza a haber una transformación física que es fundamental para el relato.
And she ends by saying, I pray it will last.
Y termina diciendo, oye, después de esta desmejoría que había tenido de la parte anímica, no, y verdad que ven este levantón, Mina dice, ella reza porque dure este cambio.
And I'll tell you, she's going to need a lot more than praying that look lasts, as we know. It's coming. So then we switch back to the storm. And for the next few pages, it's wonderful because I've been able to look, and so can anybody who goes to the Rosenbach Museum or buys the notes. You see that my Uncle Bram really enjoyed sitting up on the in the graveyard on these benches, and you look out over the ocean. And from there, he actually used his sketching skills, his drawing skills, to draw the area. And he mentions Kettleness, which is a point of land that comes out very far. And that's normally where the sun sets. That's where the weather patterns come from. And so he mentions all these real places. And he talks about the clouds rolling in. He talks about the reef, the rocks. So it's obvious that he has, and we know he did this, but he's talking to other fishermen, other sailors that take cargo, some of the whaling guys, the Coast Guard guys. He wants to figure out, Bram does, what the storm of the century is going to look like.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to make something up that's not realistic.
Yeah.
And so the description later on is as realistic as
very accurate.
Very accurate. And he also does something that I'm sure he met a guy very much like Swales. Because as we have now Swales talking to Mina saying, you know, I'm very sorry if I scared you about things. And here's some foreshadowing yet again. Someday soon the angel of death will sound his trumpet for me. We know what happens in a little while. Okay, we know what happens to Swales. So go ahead and translate that part, because there's a lot of foreshadowing, and it's good old Bram sitting up there meeting the people and getting us ready and building the suspense for this ship coming in.
Bien, Bram no es un tipo que haga las cosas a la ligera, ni nada de lo que escribe tampoco, como ya lo hemos visto en varias ocasiones, es algo que saque de la manga de ninguna manera. Al contrario, era muy meticuloso en sus investigaciones. Entonces nos está contando Baker que para escribir esta parte estuvo sentado precisamente en la banca donde Mina está sentado platicando con el señor Swales, y precisamente se fue a entrevistar a gente del puerto, a gente de los marinos, a tener el real descripción de cómo sería la tormenta del siglo, cómo sería esta gran tormenta que llegaría, ¿no?, en ese día que él quería. Entonces Bram no hace nada de manera inspirada por él mismo, sino que es un trabajo minucioso de investigación de campo, de hablar con las personas, de conseguir el relato más original para poderlo poner así en su novela.
So Swales is a complex man, and right now he's talking about his own mortality. And he says to Mina, he says, I'm content that I know I'm going to die sometime soon. For death is the only thing we can count on. That's also foreshadowing. We know that there is death, and then there is the undead. And it's the only thing we can count on. And he said, and it may be coming while we're looking and wondering. Maybe it's that wind out there over the sea that's bringing with its loss and wreck and distress and sad heart. And then he says, there's something in that wind and in the host beyond that sounds and looks and tastes and smells like death. It's in the air. That is powerful writing. The death is in the air.
Yeah, it's impressive. Aquí hay una técnica de escritura de Bram que es muy interesante, que tiene que ver que se adelanta a los hechos y los diluye entre los diálogos de otras personas. Lo vemos en varias ocasiones con Mina y demás, pero ahorita hay una situación muy interesante con el señor Swales que está prediciendo lo que le va a pasar. Entonces Bram lo que hace es, en este foreshadowing, en esta predicciones, dice lo que va a pasar, pero lo diluye dentro de su narrativa. Entonces, en el caso de Mr. Swales, que es muy descriptivo de lo que le va a pasar a él, ¿no?, esta premonición, ¿no?, maligna que él tiene que le va a pasar a él, bueno, pues sabemos que es algo que eventualmente le pasa, ¿no? Okay.
And now this next little part, I am sure it happened to Bram. He says, I was glad when the Coast Guard came along with his spyglass under his arm. I'm sure Bram was sitting up here, and along comes one of the Coast Guard guys that he used to love to talk with. And he goes, look, over there. It's that Russian ship that's got the sails, and he's crazy because all the other ships have come in. This guy's out here. There's a problem. I can't make her out, but she's Russian by the look of her. She's knocking about in the queerest of ways. She doesn't know. She doesn't know her mind a bit. She sees that the storm is coming, but can't decide whether to go up north or to put in here. Now, the readers need to know that this little safe harbor in Whitby is called Collier's Hope. And this was built specifically to allow ships to come in and get out of the rough seas, to save their cargo. They have to pay a small fee if they come in afterwards, but it was worth it. So again, this is Bram utilizing the harbor for what it was. I'm sure it was a Coast Guard guy that he knew well, and he just took all of that personal experience and turned it into the story.
He was reporting, actually.
It is. He is functioning like a newspaper reporter, which happens right after this. So go ahead and translate.
Otro detalle que es sensacional que dice Dacre que él está seguro que seguramente pasó que Bram Stoker estando ya en la playa de repente llegó esta persona, el Coast Guard, el salvacostas, ¿no? Y llegó con el miralejos, ¿no? Y le dijo, mira, ahí viene lo de la tormenta. Entonces todo esto que describe Bram en su novela, está Dacre completamente seguro de que son cosas que le pasaron directamente a Bram, no cosas que se haya sacado, insisto, de la manga ni de su inspiración, sino relatos. En muchos sentidos lo que estamos diciendo es que él reportea, ¿no? Cosas que le sucedieron, ¿no? Y las adapta de manera magistral dentro de su relato. Okay.
And I think this next part you should talk a little bit about, because what you did with the newspaper, creating this wonderful design of the Daily Graph. It's really cool because Bram would have seen the newspapers and he would have seen, the wreck of the ship. But what's pretty cool is, I don't know how you did this graphically by creating the newspaper of the Daily Graph, and it's, from your correspondent. It's got the whole article about the account of how this ship came in, how the weather was terrible, and it was such a strange weather pattern. Fishermen, Coast Guard, all these people came out to try to help ships. And back in the day, what our listeners have to understand is, whenever there was a ship in distress, the townspeople would all come out because it was their husbands or their sons that were at great risk. And they had all contributed money to the guys, not the Coast Guard as much as the life-saving crew that would row out in the boat. And if it was too rough to go out in the boat, they actually had these little rockets. They would shoot out by like a jet, like a firework. And it would shoot out to the ship. The guy on the ship would attach this string and pull, and a wire would go between and the shore, and then they would be able to help a guy get off the ship. It was called the Rocket Brigade. And so all the people would come out to, oh my God, there's my son, there's my husband, save him, please, save him. It was a big deal. But the fact that this was a foreign ship made it even more mysterious. But you should talk a little bit about your artistic process, making this newspaper that is now featured in the story.
Actually, it's very simple because, as you well said, Bram doesn't create from scratch. I mean, he is very well known that there were an actual ship that had an accident in Whidbey. So it's very well recorded, and there are so many pictures of the incident, which happens to be the same era of Bram's when he was there. So that was very easy to take out all the pictures, because there are the actual pictures that I believe Bram took for his description. And actually, there is a newspaper, a real newspaper, which is called the Daily Graph.
Okay.
So then again, you only take you only need to find the right pieces and put it all together.
So this was the ship, the Dimitri, that Bram turned into the Demeter.
Yeah,
the names were very similar.
Very similar.
Demeter actually had silver sand for its ballast, whereas the Demeter actually had the boxes of dirt. So it's very, very similar.
Very similar. So what you need to do to talk about Dracula is to do a great research as you do. Right?
Yeah.
All the facts, no? Oh, that is important, and that you took that reference and transform it into a design, an actual design.
Well, the next thing to mention is, because you're a graphic artist, Bram was a painter, as I had mentioned earlier, a founding member of the Dublin Painting Sketching Club. So there's a section in here that I think probably caught his eye. He mentioned the different colors of the sea. He mentioned he said the experience was not lost on the painters, and doubtlessly some of the sketches of the prelude to the great storm will grace the RI walls in May next. So this was a formidable storm that Bram figured would be painted, as he would probably do himself. And then he mentions something interesting. He says the line, "as idle as a painted ship upon a painted ocean." Being the painter, you'd think he'd gravitate, but that's actually a line from the Rime of the Ancient Mariner, which is a very famous poem by Samuel Taylor Coleridge. And the poem is about a mysterious danger on the sea.
On the sea.
And it's a very long poem, but it's very similar. Again, foreshadowing about what is to come when this ship, if it's lucky enough to survive the storm, if it comes in, and what, in fact, does it bring?
The fact that Bram was a painter and a sketch artist is very important, because he should have his side very well trained to catch up all the details and then to translate it into a word. So what he wrote is actually like a photograph or a painting.
Well, he does. He describes things like that, and sometimes it takes a lot of words. Sometimes it's slow, but if you appreciate that, you can get a really accurate picture of what he's doing. As he talks about this storm here, without warning, the tempest broke with a rapidity which, at the same time, seemed incredible, and even afterwards, it's impossible to realize the whole aspect of nature at once becoming convalesced. So you better do some translating so we don't get too far ahead.
Estamos hablando de una cualidad muy importante de Bram, que es muy conocida también, que Bram Stoker era pintor y era, fundador de la sociedad de dibujo en Inglaterra. Entonces, él era un tipo que, precisamente ahorita lo que platicábamos, seguramente tenía el ojo sumamente bien entrenado, porque mucho de lo que describe en toda la novela es prácticamente una fotografía. Nos estaba contando Baker, por ejemplo, de detalles como en el mar, ¿no? La cantidad de colores que describe Bram, que puede ser un poco descriptivo y hay personas que les parece un poco lento. A mí en lo particular me gusta mucho, ¿no? Pero esta descripción, porque te deja ver perfectamente como las imágenes. Entonces, al hablar del mar, te habla de ciertos colores, de ciertas tonalidades que él pensaría, ¿no? Al utilizarla como si fuera un lienzo, ¿no? Entonces, todo ese tipo de imágenes son sumamente descriptivas y son sumamente realistas, lo cual nos ayuda a nosotros a entender mucho de lo que él estaba presentando. Okay.
So, there really was a searchlight, which was brand new, never been used before in Whitby, before Bram was there. And he goes on to say, on the summit of the East Cliff, the new searchlight was ready for experiment, but had not yet been tried. The officers in charge got it into working order, and in the pauses of onrushing mist, swept with it the surface of the sea. So what he's doing is trying to show from the shore, the searchlight showing the rocks to help this ship come in and get around these things. This was modern technology at the time, and these are things that Bram loved. How can modern inventions help people, and especially in the context of this story, when you've got the old world supernatural, Dracula would love to come in without a searchlight getting in the way. He'd love to slide in, but man's modern invention of the searchlight is helping man, but it could eventually be, hurting supernatural. And later on in the story, we realize that the new technologies of the telegram and the telegraph, the blood transfusions, those new things are hurting the vampire, the Count.
It's a balance. It's a balance of the force, actually.
Yep.
Okay. Aquí, interesante porque también estamos hablando, por ejemplo, de detalles sumamente tecnológicos para la época, como era el desarrollo del faro, el faro que ayudaba a los marinos a encontrar la llegada en las noches de tormenta. Entonces, Bram, pues siempre fue un aficionado, ¿no?, a todo lo que es tecnología y a cómo se utiliza esta tecnología para hacer una una contraposición al poder de Drácula. Entonces, Drácula es más adelante derrotado precisamente por todas estas cuestiones tecnológicas, ¿no? Que están implementadas como transfusiones de sangre, ¿no? Y este tipo de detalles. Se me había olvidado traducir hace rato, ¿no? Que era muy importante, ¿no? En la época, la llegada de los barcos al puerto, pues la gente eran sus familiares, entonces salían mucho ayudantes, causaban mucha conmoción. Entonces, por eso es que también está muy bien retratado en la novela toda esta situación de la llegada del barco. Okay.
So we've got the real Dmitri, obviously, as the model, and now Bram uses some very powerful words to turn it back to his horror. He says, the searchlight followed the ship, and a shudder ran through all who saw her, for lashed to the helm was a corpse, to the steering wheel was a corpse, with drooping head, which swung horribly to and fro at each motion of the ship. No other form could be seen on the deck at all. A great awe came on all as they realized that the ship, as if by a miracle, had found the harbor, unsteered, save by the hand of a dead man.
Of a dead man. Wow.
That's very powerful words.
Ya, este es uno de los momentos más importantes de la novela y es bastante, bueno, está muy bien escrito evidentemente, pero además te llena los huesos de mucho miedo, porque precisamente está hablando Bram de la llegada del barco, ¿no? Que era el Demeter, en este caso el Demeter, ¿no? Con la llegada de la luz, ¿no? Y cómo la luz del faro permite ver que el barco está manejado por un muerto, ¿no? Entonces vemos la cabeza del capitán, cómo está pues dando de vueltas, ¿no? Y bueno, pues finalmente es un muerto el que viene manejando el barco, y las palabras de Bram, bueno, pues son lapidarias, ¿no? Porque es el barco traído de la mano de la muerte, ¿no? Okay.
So now there's a mystery as we're winding down this part. Here's the mystery. As the ship comes in and all the sails crash down, Bram says, but the strangest of all, at the very instant the shore was touched, an immense dog sprang up on the deck from below, as if shot up by a concussion, and running forward, jumped from the bow on the sand. Yeah. So the question is, this was obviously nighttime. Was there was a massive storm? Was there a searchlight on? Was it actually a dog? Did it look like a dog? Could it have been the wolf? Or was whatever this creature was able to turn it into a dog to disguise itself and not be as straightforward as a wolf? So as this person is explaining this part of the story, Enrique, I want your opinion. Was it a dog, or did it appear as a dog? And then later on we find, as it has gone into the town of Whitby, it's done some damage. Before you answer the question, though, there is a story in the Whitby area of something called the Bagast, which is a big black dog that is very evil. So Bram could have decided that the Count is smart enough to shapeshift into things, so he blends in, and does he choose him not to be a dog? Maybe he's the Bagast. Maybe he's not yet a wolf. Who knows? But it's a good mystery, because it doesn't tell us right off the bat that the Count is here. You just wonder, what was that? What is that? Is that the enemy that we don't know, or is it the enemy that we do know?
And actually, there's the first manifestation of animalism of the Count, because we know about the sisters, but we only know that he commands wolves at this point.
Yes.
But and when he arrives into Whitby, for me, I can always see him as a wolf, you know, and for people, a wolf in the night could be easily confused as a big dog,
sure,
or as a myth, as you well said, as a legend, which is very, very well run. But actually, that is another great thing about Bram, because he is using local folklore to blend and give realism to his novel.
No, that's exactly it. So we have a pretty good idea of what it is, but nothing confirmed, and that creates more suspenseful buildup. The storm was not enough. We now have, oh my God, is it possibly, what is in the cargo? We've got to get confirmation later on what it is. And I guess the last thing I want to say about this chapter is there is a guy who's narrating this part of the story. And he says, it's a long way from the West Cliff drawbridge to Tate Hill Pier. That's part of Whitby. But your correspondent is a fairly good runner and came well ahead of the crowd. When I arrived, however, I found already assembled on the pier a crowd whom the Coast Guard and police refused to come on board. Your correspondent is probably Bram Stoker, who was a very good runner and an athlete. And he is the guy taking the notes. He is the guy, because later on you see that the correspondent has to make a legal opinion on who's allowed to have the cargo of a ship that is wrecked, and that's a legal decision, and we'll get that in the next reading. But again, the whole thing ends with unbelievable realism brought on by all this tremendous suspense. And once again, as we're focused on the ship and the shipwreck and the Count, we wonder what the heck's going to go on with Mina and Lucy as she's doing her sleepwalking, and the health of Holmwood's father.
And then again, Bram is again a character in the novel with so many faces.
Yeah.
Wow.
True.
Okay. Yeah. Y aquí, bueno, pues ya para cerrar un poco, estamos viendo, bueno, todo otra vez el tema del realismo, cómo Bram se inserta otra vez en la novela, ¿no? Porque, bueno, vemos en esta ocasión, este es el reportero, ¿no? Que está narrando la llegada del barco, ¿no? Y, bueno, pues es un tramo muy largo de recorrer, entonces él dice que este reportero que está narrando, bueno, pues es un buen corredor, que al mismo tiempo Bram era un buen corredor, y seguramente él era el que hacía todas esas cosas, ¿no? De una manera insertándose, ¿no? En el relato. Hey, Dacre, this is one of the most exciting weeks. I mean, the arrival of the Demeter and what's happening next week. I don't want to spoil anything, but it's going to be amazing. It's so exciting and so mysterious. I really like the image of the captain being very attached to the wheel. It's very powerful image in there.
And I'd like you to translate the last two sentences here, because Bram, I think he feels the same way you do. He says, I shall send in time for your next issue, this is the reporter, further details on the derelict ship which found her way so miraculously into harbor in the storm. It really was a miracle. So when you think of, if it's a miracle, who's got control and what is in the ship? They haven't talked about in the bottom of the ship yet, any of that. It's just it made its way in, the captain they found, no other crew, and the dog. So yeah, the suspense is building. We will learn much more next week. Until then.
So many questions. Ok, y ya para finalizar, bueno, pues son demasiadas preguntas las que están sucediendo y demasiado misterio alrededor de esto, ¿no? Tenemos la figura del capitán que llegó muerto, ¿no? Y que él lleva el barco a puerto, pero las circunstancias en las que llega son demasiado milagrosas. Entonces, bueno, la gente está con mucho suspenso para ver qué es lo que viene. So, Dacre, thank you very much. See you next week.
Okay, man. Ciao.
Have a nice one. Bye-bye.
Yep. Bye.
Muchísimas gracias, hasta aquí el relato, no se pierdan lo que sigue la siguiente semana, que se pone cada vez mejor. Hasta pronto, chao, chao.